That night changed everything. The blue light pulsed as if it were alive, emitting a low hum that I felt more in my bones than in my ears. The strange metallic object, part of some impossible technology, vibrated between my fingers as the visitor taught me the sequence. "This is not magic," he said, his voice a thought inside my own head. "It is merely the physics of a time beyond your own." And then, 24 hours later, the first million appeared. Would you believe that prosperity is just a mental command waiting to be activated? My name is Rafael Torres, and 6 months ago, at 48 years old, I was just another man broken by the system. Not dramatically broken, not in a way that makes headlines, but quietly, slowly, and completely worn down to nothing. 25 years. I had given 25 years of my life to the same engineering firm. I designed cooling systems for massive data centers, the invisible architecture that runs your world. I was good at it. I was reliable. And in the end, none of it mattered. The dismissal came in a sterile, white envelope, handed to me by a woman half my age who couldn't meet my eyes. No warning, no ceremony, just a cold, corporate severance. The system is a machine that runs on momentum. When you're part of it, you move forward. When you're cast out, you stop. And then you start to slide backward. Fast. The bank began sending letters. First polite, then firm, then threatening. The words foreclosure and repossession were printed in a bold, unforgiving font, like a death sentence. The house I had built, the lawn I had mowed every Saturday, the walls that held the faint pencil marks of my son's growth. All of it was about to become a memory owned by someone else. My divorce had already claimed my savings, a slow, painful amputation of my financial life. But the emotional cost was higher. My son, Alex, was 23. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and disappointment that was worse than anger. I was his father, the man who was supposed to have the answers, and I had become a problem to be managed. Our conversations were hollow, brief exchanges across a chasm of my failure. My doctor, a kind but clinical man, just kept adjusting the dosage. The small orange bottle of anxiety medication on my nightstand was my first and last companion of the day. It didn't bring peace, only a dull, gray numbness that kept the panic from boiling over. Every morning was the same. I would wake before the dawn, not from rest, but from exhaustion. The weak, gray light would filter through the blinds, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, feeling a physical weight on my chest. It felt like a slab of concrete, slowly hardening, making each breath a conscious effort. This apartment, once my bachelor pad, my fortress of solitude after the divorce, now felt like a prison cell. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of a clock that seemed to be counting down my remaining moments of solvency. I went through the motions. I updated my resume, polished my cover letters, and sent them out into the digital void. The silence that came back was a form of torture. Occasionally, I'd get an interview. I'd put on my old, slightly too tight suit, a relic from a more confident era. I remember one interview with a tech startup. The hiring manager was young, energetic, and looked at me as if I were a fossil. He used terms I didn't know and glanced at my graying temples with a polite, dismissive smile. "We're looking for a more dynamic fit," he said. Another one was more direct. After a promising conversation, the feedback came through a recruiter. "They feel you're overqualified." We both knew what that meant. Too old, too expensive. That specific night, the night it all began, the pressure had reached a critical point. I was parked in my old sedan at the far end of a deserted mall parking lot. The neon signs of closed stores cast long, lonely shadows on the asphalt. I had a pen and the back of a gas station receipt. I did the math again and again, hoping for a different answer. The numbers were cruel. I had exactly 43 days. 43 days until the final savings account was empty. 43 days until the bank's final notice expired. 43 days until I would lose everything. The thought of being on the streets, a man with a master's degree in engineering becoming a statistic, consumed me. It was a cold, physical fear that settled deep in my stomach. I started the car and just drove. No destination. The city lights blurred into streaks of red and white through my tired eyes. I was running, but there was nowhere to go. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, my knuckles white. My aimless drive took me to the outskirts of the city, up the winding road to the old abandoned observatory on Sentinel Hill. As a teenager, it was where I'd go with my friends, a place where we'd look up at the stars and talk about the future, a future that felt limitless and bright. Now, its rusted, silent dome looked like a monument to my own broken dreams. I parked the car and got out. The air was cool and crisp. I needed to breathe. I needed the silence of the night to swallow the noise in my head. I tilted my head back, looking at the familiar spread of stars against the inky blackness. And it was then that I saw it. Not a shooting star, not a plane. It was a light. A single point of soft, blue light descending from the heavens. But it wasn't falling. It was choosing its path. At first, my engineer's brain tried to categorize it. A meteorite would have been a straight, fiery line. A helicopter would have had sound, flashing lights. This was different. It moved with a fluid, intelligent grace that defied explanation. It would slow down, hover for a moment as if considering its options, and then drift sideways in a curve that was aerodynamically impossible. It didn't fall, it descended. It painted a silent arc against the velvet black of the night sky. The object seemed to be heading for the wooded area just below the observatory, about 200 yards from where I stood. Every rational instinct screamed at me to get back in the car, lock the doors, and drive away as fast as I could. My mind cycled through a dozen logical, terrifying explanations, from secret military drones to something far stranger. But there was another feeling, something deeper and quieter than the fear. It was a pull, a profound, inexplicable curiosity that felt less like a choice and more like a magnetic alignment. It was as if a part of me I didn't know existed was recognizing something it had been waiting for its entire life. My feet began to move before I had made a conscious decision to walk. As I moved closer, leaving the gravel path and stepping onto the damp earth between the trees, the atmosphere began to change. The air grew thick and heavy, and a strange tingling sensation danced across my skin, like a low-voltage current. The familiar scent of pine and damp soil was now overlaid with something else. The clean, sharp smell of ozone, like the air after a powerful lightning strike. I pushed through a final line of ancient oak trees and stopped. Before me was a small clearing, and in the center of that clearing was a perfect, flattened circle of grass, swirled as if by a silent vortex. At its heart rested a metallic, disc-shaped object. It was no bigger than a small car, with a seamless, dark gray surface that seemed to drink the moonlight, reflecting nothing. There was no sound, no hum, no engine, no noise at all. Yet the very air around it shimmered and vibrated, like the heat rising from asphalt on a blistering summer day. It was a silence that was full, pressurized, and alive. As I watched, mesmerized, a section of the disk side seemed to melt away. It wasn't a door opening. It was a fluid transformation, the metal parting like water to create a smooth, arched opening. A soft, internal blue light spilled out, illuminating the clearing. And then he emerged. He was humanoid, but much taller than any man I had ever seen, perhaps 7 feet tall. His form was slender, elegant. His skin was a soft, luminous blue, shimmering with a subtle, silvery light, like liquid porcelain. He had no hair. His face was harmonious, perfectly symmetrical, with large, almond-shaped eyes of a deep, calm indigo. I should have been terrified. I should have run. But I didn't. As I looked into those ancient, peaceful eyes, a wave of profound tranquility washed over me, extinguishing the fear, the anxiety, the desperation that had been my constant companions for months. It was a peace that made no... The interior of the vessel was bathed in that same soft, blue light, and the air was cool and still, carrying that clean scent of ozone. Zaphir led me to a central column that opened like the petals of a flower, revealing a complex lattice of crystalline structures. They pulsed with a gentle, internal light, shifting in color from deep indigo to a soft silver. It was a machine that seemed more grown than built. My hands, which had trembled with anxiety just hours before, were now surprisingly steady. I touched one of the crystals. It was warm, smooth as glass, and it hummed with a low vibration that traveled up my arm and settled in my chest, a feeling of deep resonance. My knowledge of electrical engineering, of thermodynamics and energy flow was the key that fit this impossible lock, but in ways I could never have imagined. The principles were the same: circuits, conductors, compensators, but the materials were alive. The energy wasn't flowing through dead wires. It was being coaxed through living pathways of light and crystal. Zaphir watched in silence. He didn't give me instructions. He would simply incline his head or make a subtle gesture with one of his long, elegant hands, and I would understand. It was as if he were helping me remember a language I already knew. I wasn't just recalibrating a device. I was harmonizing it. I would focus my intent on a specific crystal, and it would brighten in response. I would visualize the energy flow balancing, and the entire lattice would shift its humming to a more stable, peaceful tone. It was a dialogue without words, a collaboration between my mind and this extraordinary technology. When the final crystal in the sequence pulsed with a steady, brilliant white light, a soft chime resonated throughout the vessel, a sound so pure it felt like it was cleaning the very air. I leaned back, my shirt damp with sweat, a feeling of profound accomplishment washing over me. It was the first time in months I had felt truly useful, truly myself. Zaphir placed a hand on my shoulder. The touch was light, yet it sent a wave of warmth and tranquility through my entire body, dissolving the last remnants of my exhaustion. "You have done well, Rafael Torres," the voice in my mind said. "You helped when you could have fled. You repaired when you could have betrayed. In return, I will show you what your people have forgotten." He guided me from the engine chamber into a smaller, perfectly spherical room. The walls were seamless, and the blue light seemed to emanate from the very air itself. In the exact center, floating without any visible support, was a cube of what looked like polished quartz, about the size of my fist. It pulsed slowly, a soft light breathing within it. "This is a consciousness amplifier," Zaphir explained. "It does not create. It merely clarifies the signal you are already sending. It makes the invisible visible. Watch." He closed his deep indigo eyes for a moment. His serene expression did not change, yet the air in front of him began to shimmer. Tiny motes of light, like dust in a sunbeam, began to gather and swirl. "I will think of a flower," Zaphir's voice resonated. The particles of light danced and wove themselves together, coalescing into an impossible shape. A stem of pale green light grew downwards, leaves of emerald light unfurled, and then, petal by petal, an orchid bloomed in the space between us. It was made entirely of light, a translucent, holographic sculpture of impossible beauty. And yet, as I stared at it, a sweet, floral fragrance filled the room. I could smell it. It was as real as any flower I had ever held. "This is advanced technology?" I stammered, my engineer's mind grasping for a familiar framework. "It is technology, yes, but not as you understand it," Zaphir communicated. "It is the technology of consciousness itself. Your science seeks to understand the universe by breaking it apart. Ours understands that nothing is separate. Thought, energy, and matter are not different things. They are the same substance vibrating at different frequencies, like water, ice, and steam." His gaze held mine. "To prove this to you, think of something specific, something personal, something you believe is solid and real and far from here." My mind raced. I thought of the old silver pocket watch my grandfather had given me when I graduated from college. It had a small dent on the side from where he'd dropped it once. I hadn't seen it in years. It was tucked away in a dusty box in my apartment closet. I pictured it clearly in my mind. The weight of it, the worn silver casing, the faint scratches on the crystal face, and that specific, memorable dent. Instantly, a shimmering, translucent version of the watch materialized in the air, right next to the light orchid. I could see every detail perfectly. That's just a projection, I argued, my skepticism a reflex. A hologram. Zaphir's expression was one of infinite patience. Check your pocket, his voice came, soft as a whisper in my mind. My hand trembled as I reached into the pocket of my jeans. My fingers brushed against something cool, round, and metallic. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled it out. There it was. Not a projection, not a memory. It was the watch. Heavy, solid, real. I ran my thumb over the dent on the side. It was my grandfather's watch, which had been miles away in a sealed box, now resting in the palm of my hand. The very laws of physics, the foundation of my entire worldview, crumbled into dust in that single, silent moment. The amplifier only made the process instantaneous. Zaphir's thoughts continued, as calm as the deep space between stars. Your world operates on this very same principle, just with a delay. The lag is caused by the collective disbelief of your species. What you call reality is the manifestation of the consciousness commands you are constantly and unconsciously broadcasting. He explained that my desperation, my focused fear of having only 43 days left, was a powerful command in itself. I was creating the very reality I dreaded, simply by giving it all of my emotional energy. The universe, he explained, doesn't judge your commands. It doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you fear. It only responds to the frequency of your feeling, to the clarity of your focus. He then began to teach me the sequence. It wasn't a string of words to be chanted or a complex ritual. It was an internal technology, a precise alignment of mind, emotion, and spirit. He called it a vibrational code. Start with something small, he advised. The human mind has built strong walls of disbelief. A request that seems too large will simply bounce off those walls. Test the principle. Give your rational mind evidence it cannot deny. As I stood there, the weight of my grandfather's watch a solid truth in my hand, I decided on a test. It felt absurd, but it was the first thing that came to me. There was an old friend from my university days, Edward Roman. We had been close, but life had pulled us in different directions. I hadn't heard from him in at least 20 years. The thought of him calling me out of the blue was improbable, but not strictly impossible. It was the perfect experiment. Zaphir guided me through the sequence, right there in the shimmering blue light of his vessel. First was the clearing of doubt. Your mind is like a noisy radio station, he conveyed. You must silence the static to broadcast a clear signal. He taught me a simple breathing technique. Inhale for a count of 7, hold for a moment of perfect stillness, and exhale for a count of 8. The slightly longer exhale, he explained, calmed the body's nervous system, telling it that it was safe. I did this over and over, and with each breath, the frantic, panicked voice in my head grew quieter, until there was only a profound stillness. Second, was the emotion of the fulfilled reality. Do not ask from a place of lack, Zaphir instructed. You must feel the gratitude of the answered prayer before you make the request. This is the engine. The feeling is the fuel. I closed my eyes and forced myself to imagine the feeling of having just spoken to Edward. The warmth of reconnecting, the pleasant surprise, the joy of hearing a familiar voice. I had to generate that emotion from nothing, to feel it in my chest as a real, physical warmth. It was the hardest part. Third, the sensory visualization. I didn't just picture his name on my phone. I saw the specific cracks on my phone's screen protector. I heard my specific ringtone, the default one I never bothered to change. I felt the cool plastic of the phone in my hand as I answered. Listen, this is going to sound crazy, he continued, but I had the most vivid dream about you last night. I haven't thought about you in years, but when I woke up, I just had this overwhelming, completely inexplicable need to find you and make sure you were okay. I had to hire one of those online search services to get this number. Am I crazy? Are you okay? I sank onto the edge of my bed, the phone pressed to my ear. I'm okay, Edward, I managed to whisper, a single tear rolling down my cheek. I'm okay. In that moment, a new foundation settled within me. My feeling is the blueprint. My certainty is the builder. The world doesn't happen to me. The world is built by me. In the weeks that followed, my life became a secret laboratory. I walked through the world like everyone else, but I was conducting quiet experiments that were systematically dismantling my old reality. I started small, just as Zaphir had advised, building a portfolio of evidence that my logical mind couldn't refute. I needed a parking spot in a crowded downtown lot. I would perform the sequence in my car before I arrived. I would breathe, feel the relief and gratitude of having already parked, visualize myself turning off the engine in the perfect spot, and issue the command. 3 times in a row, a car pulled out from a space directly in front of the entrance just as I drove up. An unexpected bill arrived, threatening to drain my dwindling account. Instead of panicking, I sat down, cleared my mind, and generated the feeling of financial relief. I visualized opening my mailbox and finding unexpected money. 2 days later, a letter from the IRS arrived. A miscalculation on a tax return from 3 years prior. They owed me a refund of several $100s. The results were frighteningly precise. Each success was a small tremor that cracked the foundations of my lifelong beliefs. I was filled with a wild, bubbling excitement. I had discovered the cheat code to reality, and I felt an overwhelming urge to share it. That was my first mistake. My younger sister, Veronica, had always been my anchor. I met her for coffee, my hands shaking with a mixture of caffeine and revelation. I tried to explain what had happened, my words tumbling out in a rush: the light, the being, the watch, the phone call. I watched her face as I spoke, saw her warm, concerned expression slowly curdle into a mask of pitying worry. "Raph," she said, placing her hand over mine. Her touch was meant to be comforting, but it felt like an anchor pulling me back down to the old world. "You're having a breakdown. It's completely understandable after everything you've been through. Losing your job, the house. It's too much for anyone. Maybe we should talk to your doctor about finding a good psychiatrist." I tried to show her. "Just watch," I said, my voice desperate. "There's a cardinal that often comes to the feeder outside your window, right? Let's make a blue jay appear instead." I closed my eyes, ran the sequence, and focused. When I opened them, a brilliant blue jay was perched on the feeder, letting out a sharp cry. I pointed, triumphant. Veronica just shook her head, a sad smile on her face. "It's a beautiful coincidence, Raph. That's all." She had seen the evidence, but her belief system wouldn't allow her to process it. She chose the explanation that kept her world intact. My son, Alex, was even harsher. I caught him on one of his rare visits to my apartment. He listened with his arms crossed, his face a stony mask of disapproval. "Dad, you need to stop," he said when I finished. His voice was cold, clinical. "You have to stop with these stories. I'm worried you're developing something serious. Schizophrenia, maybe. Do you even hear yourself talking? Alien spaceships? Materializing your thoughts? This isn't healthy." He wasn't just disbelieving. He was afraid for me, and his fear felt like a judgment. The chasm between us, which I had so hoped to bridge, had just become a canyon. The final blow came at my weekly support group for unemployed professionals. It was held in the gray, soulless basement of a community center. Dr. Marcos, the well-meaning but rigid group counselor, encouraged us to share our job-seeking strategies. Tentatively, I mentioned the idea of focusing on the feeling of success before an interview. I didn't mention Zaphir or anything strange, but even that was too much. I was met with a few snickers and condescending smiles. After the session, Dr. Marcos pulled me aside. "Mr. Torres," he said, his tone dripping with clinical compassion, "I understand that trauma and desperation can lead to what we call magical thinking. It's a defense mechanism, but it will not solve your real-world problems. You need to focus on practical steps, not fantasies." I drove home that evening feeling utterly alone. I had been given the keys to the universe, but I was locked out of the world of men. Every person I tried to share it with held up a mirror, and in it, I saw the reflection of a madman. That night, sitting in the silence of my apartment, I made a decision. They had built their reality on the sturdy ground of what they could see and prove. But I had been shown the blueprints of the invisible architecture that held it all up. I would stop trying to show them the plans. They couldn't read them anyway. Instead, I would start building. Quietly. Alone. The world thought I was broken. My family thought I was crazy. But I still had a foreclosure notice on my table, and the clock was ticking. The small tests were over. It was time to build a miracle. The foreclosure notice on my small kitchen table felt colder than a block of ice. It was a stark, black and white declaration of my failure, a tombstone for the life I had tried to build. The date printed on it was a death sentence. I had 12 days left. 12 days until the locks were changed and my world was reduced to whatever I could fit in the trunk of my car. The bank had been a wall of institutional indifference. My former colleagues, fighting their own silent battles, offered sympathy but had no solutions. Every job application I'd sent out had vanished into a digital void. The small successes with parking spots and tax refunds felt like child's play now. This was the final exam. This was the moment where the new physics of reality would either save me or prove that I was, as my family feared, truly and irrevocably lost in delusion. I waited until the city outside my window fell into the deep quiet of midnight. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. This couldn't be a performance born of panic. Panic was the static Zaphir had warned me about, the frequency of lack that would only create more lack. I had to go into this from a place of absolute power. I sat at the table, the notice pushed to the side. I closed my eyes and began the sequence, this time with a level of focus that bordered on ferocious. First, the clearing of doubt. I began the breathing. Inhale for 7. Hold for 1. Exhale for 8. The first few breaths were ragged. The voices of my tormentors came unbidden. "You're having a breakdown," Veronica's gentle, pitying voice said. "Schizophrenia, maybe," Alex's cold diagnosis echoed. "Magical thinking," Dr. Marcos's clinical assessment concluded. They swirled in my mind, a chorus of reasonable doubt. But I didn't fight them. I simply observed them, and with each long, slow exhale, I let them go. I imagined each exhalation was a soft gray mist, carrying the static out of my body and into the silent room, where it dissolved into nothing. After 10 minutes, there was only the sound of my own steady breath. The stillness was no longer empty. It was full of potential. Second, the emotion of the fulfilled reality. $1 million. The number was so abstract, so far from my current reality, that my mind wanted to reject it. So I didn't focus on the number. I focused on the feeling it would give me. Asterisk relief. Asterisk, I searched for that feeling in my body. I remembered the feeling of finally taking off a heavy backpack after a long hike. I amplified it. I felt the muscles in my shoulders and neck release a tension they had held for years. My jaw unclenched. A warmth bloomed in my chest, a physical sensation of a great weight being lifted. It spread through my limbs, a gentle, humming peace. Then came the gratitude. I wasn't grateful for the money. I was living in the state of gratitude from having received it. Thank you for this peace. Thank you for this safety. Thank you for this freedom. I let the feeling become so real, it almost brought tears to my eyes. Third, the sensory visualization. I didn't just see a bank statement. I saw my laptop screen, the familiar logo of my bank's website. I visualized my fingers typing my password, the click-clack of the keys. The subject line was Consulting Opportunity Urgent. A tech firm I'd never heard of had found my old professional profile online. They were in a crisis with a series of overheating data centers, and my specific, niche expertise in thermal cooling systems was exactly what they needed. They offered an immediate consulting contract, with a $50,000 advance wired upon signing to secure my time. I signed the documents digitally and sent them back. At 12:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was a lawyer I didn't know. "Mr. Torres," she said, "I'm calling from the firm representing the plaintiffs in the old class action lawsuit against your former employer for wrongful termination. It was a suit filed 5 years ago that I had completely forgotten about, assuming it had gone nowhere. The company has settled," she continued. "Your portion of the settlement, after legal fees, is $280,000. We will be wiring the funds this afternoon." My hand was shaking as I hung up the phone. It was happening. The universe wasn't just delivering the money. It was showing me the pathways, the logical threads it could pull to make the impossible possible. The rest of the day was a blur of calm anticipation. I read a book. I went for a walk. I refused to check my account, refused to contaminate the certainty with anxious need. Then, at 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes before my self-imposed deadline, the final notification pinged on my laptop. It was from an international engineering guild I had joined years ago. The email informed me that a speculative design I had submitted to their Innovation for the Future contest 2 years prior, a radical new system for atmospheric water harvesting, had been chosen by a sovereign wealth fund for full-scale development and implementation. The prize, an initial licensing fee, was $670,000. I opened my banking app. I watched the numbers update. The first deposit, the second, the third. My balance read $1 million. $1 million. In just under 24 hours, I sank to my knees on the floor of my small apartment, not in shock, but in awe. The tears that came were not of joy for the money, but of recognition for the magnificent, responsive, and intelligent reality I had finally, truly met. I now had the proof, but the proof was only the beginning. Now, I had to understand the code. As the numbers on the screen glowed in the dark room, a different kind of light began to shimmer in the corner of my eye. It started as a subtle distortion in the air, like heat haze, and slowly coalesced into a familiar form. Zaphir was standing by the window. He hadn't entered through the door. He had simply arrived. He was translucent, a figure woven from moonlight and deep space, his silver-blue skin gently luminous. His physical shape was gone, but his presence was more potent than ever. His voice resonated in my mind, not as a sound, but as a thought that was distinctly not my own. "You have understood." I stood up, my body still buzzing with the energy of the day's events. "I don't know if I understand," I confessed, my own voice a hoarse whisper in the room. "It feels like I'm remembering something I was born knowing, but was taught to forget." A feeling of serene approval emanated from him. "That is the precise truth. This is not a new ability you have learned. It is an original faculty you have reclaimed. The command is not a spell you cast upon the world. It is the awakening of the world builder that already exists within you. All conscious beings are native creators. Your species has simply been sleeping, dreaming it was a victim of circumstance." I walked over to the armchair and sat, the laptop on the floor still displaying its impossible number. The sequence. Why does it work so perfectly? Because it aligns the 3 fundamental instruments of creation, he conveyed. First, your thought. The thought is the blueprint, the architectural drawing. It must be clear, specific, and unburdened by the static of doubt. This is the structural frame. He continued, his presence making the air in the room feel calm and thick, like water. Second, your emotion. The feeling is the energy, the fuel that brings the blueprint to life. It is the current that flows through the wires. A thought without feeling is a house without power. You must generate the emotion of the reality already fulfilled, for that feeling is the very vibrational signature of what you wish to create. It is the engine. And the last part, I asked, the certainty. The certainty is the command. It is the hand that flips the switch that tells the engine to start and the power to flow. It is the moment the programmer hits enter and the code begins to run. It is not hope, which is a plea from a position of powerlessness. It is knowing. It is an instruction issued from the core of your being to the core of the quantum field. You are not a beggar asking the universe for a favor. You are the universe, in a localized form, issuing a command to itself. I let that sink in. The world outside my window, the buildings, the streetlights, the distant sound of a siren, it wasn't a separate, solid thing that I was simply observing. It was consciousness in a slower, denser state. So matter is just consciousness at a low frequency. Precisely, Zaphir confirmed. And money? It is nothing more than a symbol for a current of energy. It is creative potential, frozen into a form your society has agreed to value. You are not creating paper or digital numbers. You were commanding a flow of universal energy to be redirected through your life, and it simply took the most convenient available paths to do so. I sat in the silence, feeling the truth of his words resonate in my bones. It was as if every cell in my body was waking up and nodding in agreement. A series of declarations began to form in my mind, not as affirmations to be repeated, but as statements of fundamental law that I now understood as my own nature. I am the creator, not the supplicant. My consciousness is the blueprint. My emotion is the fuel. My certainty is the command. I do not manifest what I want. I manifest what I am. The universe is not something outside of me that I must petition. The universe is an extension of me, responding to my inner state. As these thoughts crystallized, a sense of profound power and responsibility settled over me. It was not the giddy excitement of winning the lottery. It was the sober, grounding realization of my own divinity. Zaphir's form seemed to glow a little brighter. The feeling of approval returned, warm and encompassing. Now, his thoughts came, clear as a bell. Now you are speaking the original language. This is the native tongue of the cosmos. He paused, and I felt the weight of his next words before they even arrived. And it is time for more of your kind to learn it. The time that is coming for your world will demand this remembering. Zaphir's thoughts continued, taking on a more serious, expansive tone. The systems you have built founded on the illusion of scarcity and the engine of fear are reaching their operational limits. They are becoming unstable. They will collapse under the weight of their own internal contradictions. I looked out the window at the sleeping city, and for the first time, I didn't see a solid, permanent structure. I saw a temporary agreement, a collective dream that was beginning to fray at the edges. Humanity stands at a threshold, he conveyed. You will either descend into chaos, clinging to the old programs of conflict and lack, or you will awaken to your innate power as conscious creators and build a new reality based on collaboration and resonance. Those like you, who have been awakened, have a role to play. You are the living proof that another way is possible. His form began to grow more ethereal, the light within him becoming softer, more diffuse. It was clear he was preparing to leave. I cannot stay. My purpose was to provide the initial catalyst, to help you repair the damaged circuit in your own consciousness. Now, the work is yours. He extended a long, slender hand. As he did, a small object materialized in the air between us, pulsing with a gentle internal light. It floated down and came to rest in my open palm. It was a perfect octahedron made of a crystal-like substance, clear as water but radiating a faint warmth. It had 8 faces, each a perfect equilateral triangle. This is not a tool of power, Zaphir cautioned, his voice echoing in my mind as a final, crucial instruction. It has no power of its own. It is a focusing lens, a resonant mirror. It will not create for you, but when you hold it, it will amplify. The stony mask of disapproval he used to wear around me began to soften into one of reluctant curiosity. One evening, as we sat on the porch of the new house, watching the sun set behind the peaks, he finally broke his silence. "Dad, I don't understand what happened to you, but you're different. You're like the dad I remember from when I was a little kid." I smiled. I didn't try to convince him of anything. I just waited. "Whatever you're doing," he finally said, looking at me directly. "Can you teach me?" It was the moment I had hoped for more than any financial gain. I taught him the sequence, the internal technology of creation. I guided him through the clearing of doubt, the generation of feeling, the clarity of visualization, and the quiet power of certainty. He wanted to be accepted into a highly competitive master's program in robotics, but felt his grades weren't good enough. We worked on it together. 2 weeks later, he called me, his voice electric with disbelief and excitement. He had been accepted. Not only that, but a professor on the admissions board had personally championed his application, citing a powerful and intuitive grasp of complex systems from his essay, and they had offered him a full research scholarship. "How does this actually work, Dad?" he asked, the wonderment in his voice a balm on old wounds. I looked at the crystals sitting on my desk, catching the last rays of the sun. "It's not about asking the universe for things, Alex," I told him. "It's about finally realizing that you are the universe, expressing itself for a little while in human form. You're not a painter begging for paint. Your consciousness is the brush, your emotion is the paint, and your certainty is the steady hand that brings the masterpiece to life." As I write this to you now, years later, the octahedron crystal Zaphir gave me sits on my desk. It catches the morning light, not holding it, but fracturing it into 1,000 tiny rainbows that dance on the wall. It's exactly as he said it would be. It has no light of its own. It simply and perfectly reflects the light that is already here. It reflects the light that is within me. My life is unrecognizable from the one I led as that broken man in the cramped apartment. But the change isn't in the mountains I see from my window or the balance in the foundation's bank account. The real change is internal. It's a quiet hum of certainty that has replaced the frantic static of anxiety. It is the peace of knowing my own nature. Sometimes, in the quiet moments just before dawn, when the world is still and the air is cool and clean, I can feel a resonance. It's not Zaphir visiting. It is not a voice in my mind. It is more like a memory of a fundamental chord, a harmonic truth that he helped me tune back into. It's a reminder that the teacher is not a person or a being, but the truth itself. And once you have heard its note, you can find it anywhere. You can find it in the silence between your own heartbeats. I learned that the $1 million was never the point. It was the demonstration. It was the physical proof required to shatter the cage of a lifetime of conditioning. It was the universe providing a result so undeniable that my rational mind had no choice but to surrender to a deeper logic. The foundation I started has now helped dozens of engineers, artists, and thinkers, people who, like me, were told they were too old or obsolete. We don't just give them money. We teach them the sequence. We guide them in the reclamation of their own creative authority. I see miracles happen every month. A woman who was told her illness was irreversible now runs marathons. A programmer who lost everything now runs a thriving software company based on a technology he dreamed of. They are not exceptions. They are simply people who have remembered the original language. My relationship with my son, Alex, is the greatest creation of all. He is finishing his doctorate now, and his work is revolutionary. But more than that, we speak the same language. We talk not about what the world will give us, but what we will create within it. He no longer sees me as a father who lost his way, but as the one who found the map back home for both of us. The command is not a secret password. It is a state of being. It is the alignment of the inner world so that the outer world has no choice but to reflect the new blueprint. It is a constant practice, a moment-to-moment choice. It is choosing the feeling of gratitude before the evidence appears. It is choosing the thought of wholeness when the body feels broken. It is choosing the certainty of abundance when the bank account looks empty. I want to leave you with this. Take a moment, right now, just for a second. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable. Take one slow, deep breath, in through your nose, and out through your mouth. Feel the weight of your body, the gentle pull of gravity. Feel the air on your skin. You are here, in this moment. You are a focal point of consciousness in the infinite field of creation. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are the circumstance. You are not a seeker of power. You are the power. You are not a beggar asking for a miracle. Your attention, your feeling, your certainty is the miracle. I am not an echo of my past. I am the source of my future. My reality is not a thing I discover. It is a signal I broadcast. My feeling is the frequency. My certainty is the command. For so many years, I thought my life was a broken machine I had to fix with brute force. I was the desperate engineer trying to patch a ship that was already sinking. But I finally understood. Zaphir didn't come to me because my ship was broken. He came because his was. And in helping him repair his vessel, I was shown the blueprint to my own. And what I want you to truly hear, more than anything else I have said, is this. The story of the alien and the damaged craft was just a mirror. What if the damaged ship, the technology that needed repair, was never his? What if it was always your own consciousness, waiting patiently for the moment you would finally stop looking outside for a rescuer and realize you are the engineer you've been waiting for? The universe is not waiting for your plea. It is waiting for your instruction. It's waiting for your recognition of what you have always been. What reality will you command, now that you know the control panel has always been within you? Thank you for staying with me through this story. This channel is just beginning its journey, and sharing this is a big step for me. If this resonated, every subscription helps us reach the first 1,000 people, and I would be so grateful to read where you're watching from in the comments below. Let me know what you're choosing to create. Until next time, be the creator you are.